Hey, you guys want to see the coolest thing ever? Okay, hold on a second. Dun 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 dun. I'm doing the Jurassic Park theme for some reason. Dun 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 dun. That's right. I'm wearing a jacket with the strongest blade in the world, Mihawk's Yoru. It's magnificent, ladies and gentlemen. Ha! Okay, now let's see how I can manage this when I'm sitting down. Oh boy. All right. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Tekking101 and Barry back here again. This is going to be a fun video. You know why? Because it's Mihawk related. Yeah. You know how, like, when Shanks showed up at Wano and it was like a moment of realization where we're well over 1,000 chapters into this damn story, 25 years of One Piece, over 25 years now, and it was like, wow, this was the most screen time and dialogue and relevance Shanks has, like, ever had in the story since, like, chapter 1. Because Shanks was, like, very prominent in chapter 1 because that was the whole backstory with Luffy and giving him the hat and everything. But after chapter 1, he rarely shows up, okay? And so it was kind of the same situation with Mihawk in the last chapter, chapter 1058, where we have Mihawk there. He's at Buggy's delivery service with Crocodile. We find out a little bit about how he joined the Cross Guild, how Crocodile contacted him. We get his bounty for the first time ever in the story. And we find out a little bit about his past. Not much, but a little bit, okay? Which is a lot more than anything we've ever gotten. Like with Shanks, there was like one chapter in the East Blue when Mihawk was relevant. He showed up, and well, Mihawk's always relevant, but he showed up at the Baratier, he fought against Zoro, and then he left. And he was just like, all right, you know, one day you will rise to challenge me again, Roronoa Zoro, you know, kind of giving him words of encouragement, because that's what Mihawk is all about. Mihawk, as he stated in this chapter, he doesn't want to become the Emperor of the Sea. He doesn't want to become the ruler of the world. He doesn't want to find the One Piece and become king of the pirates. He doesn't even consider himself a pirate. I wouldn't think he would. He just wants to live a relatively quiet life, which is really hard when there's Marines knocking at your door and he has to keep slicing up battleships. You know what I mean? So today we're going to talk about Mihawk's past, at least the little bit that we found out about in the last chapter, all right? So, and there's actually a little bit of a difficulty, I would imagine, for Mihawk, because he is somebody that pursues the way of the sword, you know? Like, he really wants to be the strongest swordsman in the world throughout his whole life, and then he trained for it, and then he eventually achieved that. So he has the strongest blade, the Saijo Awazumono Yoru, or just Knight, and in the chapter, Brand New even stated when he was issuing Mihawk's new updated bounty, he said this is a swordsman that is even superior to red-haired Shanks, okay? Now, a lot of people might be shocked by that, like, whoa, it just flat out said, you know, Mihawk is stronger than Shanks. Well, in terms of swordsmanship, sure, I would imagine the reason why, and I mentioned this in the review, the reason why Mihawk became a warlord to begin with, and why he is referred to as the greatest swordsman in the world, is because Shanks and Mihawk, during their last duel, which was probably like apocalyptic, you know, like Duel of the Fates was playing in the background or whatever, maybe some Jedi even appeared from like a dimensional rift. Their battle was so intense, it created a rift in dimensions where some Jedi spilled through. And then, you know, Mihawk and Shanks are dueling, and then all of a sudden a bunch of Jedi are showing up with lightsabers, and then they stop dueling for 5 seconds to duel the people with lightsabers, and then they kill all of the Jedi, and then they go back to fighting against each other. It was some crazy shit, I'm sure. Like, remember that scene in Dragon Ball Broly, the movie? Not the old Broly movie, but the new Broly movie, where Gogeta's fighting Broly, and the fight gets so intense, they literally, like, break dimensions for a second, and the animation in the movie goes crazy as they're, like, punching each other through, like, 3 or 4 different dimensions before knocking back to the real one. It's kind of like that when Shanks fought Mihawk, you know what I mean? Well, at the end of that climactic, apocalyptic battle, I believe Mihawk was victorious, okay? Shanks was on the ground, and he yielded, and, you know, Mihawk, they're not gonna, like, kill each other, okay? That's not what it's about, okay? It's about testing the skill as swordsmen, all right? So Mihawk won, Shanks admitted this, and then that right there is how Mihawk became the greatest swordsman in the world. And also, probably around the same time, he became one of the warlords, okay? Now, after this, Shanks went to the east, and he met Luffy, and he lost an arm, and ever since then, Mihawk has never been interested in dueling him because it's like, it's not going to be any fun, you only have one arm, and clearly you're not going to be on the same level as you used to be. Now, is Shanks weaker now? Is Mihawk right? Is Mihawk correct in saying that, like, there's just simply no way? No matter how strong you train that other arm of yours, you could bulk that thing out until next week. You know, you could have as much hockey as you want. You're just not going to be as strong as you were when you had two arms. And honestly, I could see Mihawk's logic here. Now, Shanks, don't get me wrong, could clash with pretty much any of the strongest characters in the story with just one arm, and I think he would be fine. He sort of already did at Marineford when he clashed with Akainu. You know, I don't think anybody's looking at that battle and being like, Shanks only has one arm. Akainu would have been able to beat him easily. You know, maybe Akainu would have won. Maybe Shanks would have won. But, I mean, like, it's not going to be an easy fight either way just because he has one arm. But now I want you to imagine Shanks in his prime with two arms. You know what I mean? It's like Kenpachi Zaraki from Bleach. If Kenpachi lost an arm, he's still going to kill you every bit as good as before. Kenpachi could still clash with the best of them even if he only had one arm, right? But if he has two, that's just like world ender type shit, all right? So Mihawk was like, you know, that's not going to be any fun, you know, because I'm going to get stronger and stronger, and I still have two limbs, and I have Yoru, and, you know, Shanks has Griffin, which is, I'm assuming, a Saijo Wazamono. I'm assuming it's of the highest degree, and but he only has one arm, so no matter what he can do, you know, it's just Mihawk's like, there's no point, okay? So I would imagine after that encounter, Mihawk sort of became a little bit morose. Maybe he fell into a malaise, as it were, where he's like, man, now I'm not going to have anybody else. Like, Shanks was the only person in the world that could really give me a real fight, and now he's not able to fight me in the level I want him to anymore, so now what? So Mihawk's a warlord at this point, I would imagine, so he doesn't have to worry about the Marines knocking at his door anymore. So for the most part, he can live the quiet life that he always wanted to live, okay? And so this ties back to his former epithet, his former title, which was Marine Hunter Mihawk, okay? And this was stated by Crocodile in the last chapter. I love this because, as I said, it's a parallel to Zoro's Pirate Hunter epithet that he had during the East Blue, where he was a bounty hunter hunting pirates. Back in the day, Mihawk kind of did the same thing, except he hunted Marines for the most part. Now, why was this the case? Honestly, I don't think it was like Mihawk was out for blood to kill Marines just for the sake of it, you know what I mean? Think about both of their titles, Pirate Hunter Zoro and Marine Hunter Mihawk. Why did Zoro hunt pirates? Was it because he hated piracy? Was it because he wanted to eliminate all pirates in the world? No, that's more of Tashigi's thing. Tashigi's thing is like, I'm gonna eliminate all the pirates and take the swords back from their evil hands. You know, Zoro honestly just did it so he could eat. You know what I mean? He's just like, I'm hungry, man. He's like, all right, well, up in the mountain, there's Wicked Dick. If you can go bring in Wicked Dick, I'll feed you for a month straight. To be like, all right. Zoro takes Wado, he goes up the mountain, he cuts off Wicked Dick's family jewels, and he comes back down and he's like, all right, here he is. I'm like, all right, you get free meals for the next 2 months. It's like, oh, 2 months? Like, yeah, throw a little bonus in there for you, okay? That's why Zoro did it. Plus, the dude got lost constantly, so he had to get food somewhere, right? But it's not like he had any direct animosity toward pirates. Also, the main reason is Zoro wanted to prove himself as the greatest swordsman in the world because that was the promise he made with Kuina. Well, how do you become the greatest swordsman in the world? You leave wherever you trained, and then you fight really strong swordsmen until no one remains, okay? That's pretty much the definition for becoming the greatest swordsman in the world, okay? So he's going around, and I'm sure there were a lot of pirates that were like, oh, we hear you're the demon, you're Pirate Hunter Zoro, we'll fight you. And Zoro's like, all right. And then he fights him, and then he wins, and he's like, okay, good, I'm getting a good track record here. You know, by the time Mihawk finally showed up at the Baratier, Zoro was pretty confident in his skills. He probably had not lost very often in battle. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if after all the training he did at the Isshin Dojo, I think he left when he was 17, he met Luffy when he was 19. So that was 2 years of Zoro just wandering around the East Blue, fighting as many swordsmen as he could find. You know, mountain bandits, pirates, marines, Marines maybe occasionally. Like, whoever, like, raised his sword and gave Zoro a challenge, he accepted said challenge. He probably didn't lose very much. So by the time Mihawk finally showed up, Zoro's pretty confident. He's like, okay, I've trained my whole damn life at the Isshin Dojo. I've been traveling the world, at least the East, for the last 2 years. I can take this guy. I want to see what the gap is between me and the greatest swordsman in the world. And as we saw at the Baratie, it was a pretty wide gap, you know, with Zoro being defeated at first. Honestly, Mihawk could have finished him off with just his little dagger necklace thing, but he decided out of respect for Zoro, he used the Yoru to finish him off, okay? So that's just the idea right there for Zoro. Mihawk was probably the same. We don't know exactly who trained Mihawk. I made a video on this channel, I think Liam talked about this once too, where Rayleigh might have very well have been the master for Mihawk back in the day, which makes a lot of sense, you know? Mihawk is in his early 40s. I think he's around like 44 years old right now. Rayleigh is 78. So, you know, 25 years ago when Roger was executed, we actually do get to see Mihawk at Roger's execution at Logtown, both in episode 0, Strong World, and in one of the episodes in the anime recently. Fun fact is that there is a difference between the two, and that's one of them, Mihawk is already shown to have Yoru in the episode, and in Strong World episode 0, he actually does not have Yoru. I'm not really sure well, I mean, like, I don't think Yoru was a black blade when Mihawk first acquired it. I think he turned it into a black sword. As we learned during Wano, it's like, you know, if you train with this sword long enough, you truly unlock its potential, you can turn it into a black blade. That was what Tengu Yama Hitetsu or Sukiyake explained to Zoro, and I think Zoro is eventually going to turn the Wado Ichimonji into a Kokuto, into a black sword, okay? But anyway, so even if he did have Yoru during the time when Roger was executed, I don't think it was a black sword, and he eventually, you know, made it into a black blade of his own skill, okay? So anyway, back then he was 19 years old. Rayleigh would have been, it was like, hold on, 68, 50. Have been like 52. He would have been like in his early 53. He would have been like in his early 50s. So it actually does sort of line up correctly. Like, Roger disbanded the Roger Pirates, and they all went their separate ways. And maybe Rayleigh, you know, when he first left the crew, he was like, what do I do? Now Rayleigh lives on the Sabaody Archipelago, and he's just going around gambling and, you know, going to amusement parks and hanging out at Shaki's bar or whatever. But I don't think he's settled into that retirement life, like, right away. Think about, like, the immediate months and years that followed after the Roger Pirates were disbanded. Rayleigh probably didn't know what to do with himself. He was probably like, man, I've been a pirate for, you know, decades with Roger, traveling around the world, seeing the greatest sights ever, literally finding the last island of Laughtail. What do I do now that I'm retired, you know? And so maybe Mihawk approached him at this point, and he was like, I want you to teach me. And this actually would have been right around the time that Zoro approached Mihawk to teach him. Zoro was 19 years old when he approached Mihawk and asked him to train him at Kurigana Island for the 2-year time skip, and Mihawk was 19 years old when he witnessed Roger's execution. So I like to think the idea goes that maybe he did have Yoru at this point. Maybe his former master gave it to him. Maybe it was a family heirloom, just like how the Wado Ichimonji was Kuina's and then passed it down to Zoro. Maybe it was the same situation. Maybe Mihawk's family was a family of really powerful swordsmen or swordswomen, and then, you know, passed down the sword to Mihawk, and he had it, and he was training, and he was really good. But then after the Roger Pirates, after they were disbanded and after Roger was executed, maybe Mihawk had the idea of, like, I'm going to seek out Dark King Rayleigh, because Roger was found and he was captured and he was executed. What's with the rest of the crew? And Roger was an amazing swordsman. And maybe Roger, you know, he could have taught Mihawk as well if he survived. That would be really cool if Roger was the one that instructed Mihawk. But since he was dead, you know, Mihawk was like, all right, the second strongest swordsman on the entire crew would have been Rayleigh, and he's still insanely powerful. So maybe while everybody was excited about the Great Pirate Era, like, we're going to go out there and find the One Piece, raise the black sails, raise the Jolly Rogers. Everybody in the Great Pirate Era was going out to sea. Mihawk was, like, looking for Rayleigh. He's like, I want to find Rayleigh. I want to find where that old man is hanging out, and I want him to teach me the way of the sword. Maybe Mihawk did find him, and then that's, you know, all she wrote there. But in the meantime, he wanted to become stronger and stronger. And so he probably started challenging Marines, fighting the Marines constantly. And what happens if you keep fighting Marines? Eventually, you're going to be branded as a pirate, and you're eventually going to be sought after with a bounty, okay? And Mihawk did not like this very much. In fact, I would not be surprised if this is how it went. let's say Mihawk, because he's a gentleman, he's a very respectful man about town, you know what I mean? He does not just walk into towns and wipe out, everybody there just for the sake of it, So imagine if Mihawk was traveling the Grand Line and he encountered some Marines. And the Marines, let's say it was a Marine captain or somebody with a relatively high rank, might even be a rear admiral or a vice admiral or something back in the day. This was right around the time Roger was executed. And so he sees this vice admiral with a sword, and maybe he recognized him, and Mihawk was like, I want to have a duel with you, sir. And the vice admiral, let's say, is this really raucous kind of like asshole, where he's just like at a bar drinking on duty, and he's like, all right, you want to fight me, you stupid kid? All right, look. Let's fight. I'll finish you off before dinner or whatever. And so they go outside and they duel. And let's say Mihawk did this by the book. You know what I mean? Like, 10 paces or whatever. Mihawk has Yoru. He's going to duel. He respects the way of the sword, just like Zoro does. Okay? So let's say they dueled and Mihawk won. Mihawk knocked the vice admiral on his ass or something like that. And he won. And Mihawk was like, I thought you would be better than that. And he turned to walk away, and the vice admiral was like pissed off and just like, how dare you make a fool in front of my men? And he tried to like stab Mihawk in the back, and Mihawk is like, that's the greatest sin you can commit, you're attacking a man with his back turned. Oh no, you don't do that. And so Mihawk maybe sliced off his arm or some shit. Because at that point, that's the code of conduct when you're a damn, proper swordsman that respects Bushido and shit. Okay? If you've won the fight and it's like, okay, good fight, and you've yielded and you walk away and the other guy gets up and tries to attack you, tries to stab you in the back, if you lose an arm at that point, that's on you. You know what I mean? You're the one that broke the code of conduct. So Mihawk turns around, slices off his arm or something, slices off his hand, and the vice admiral is like, you're gonna pay for this! And he runs off, and then he's just like, Mihawk, this horrible pirate, he's going up and down the Grand Line, slaying Marines! And then I honestly think that's probably the best logical way of how that could happen. I don't see Mihawk just waking up one day and being like, I'm gonna start slaughtering Marines for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's probably how it went down. I think he got into a battle with a really high-ranking Marine. He won, but the Marine had sour grapes about it or whatever, and he ended up telling the world that there was this really strong swordsman, which he was, going around hunting Marines, which he was challenging Marines, maybe not necessarily like slaying them like he was a serial killer or something, but that's sort of how he got painted. Kind of like Hakuba a little bit there, Cavendish's other personality, okay? So anyway, he now has to live with this crap. He now has to live with a high bounty on his head. I don't know what his original bounty would have been. You can make a guess, but it probably kept going up through the years as he got stronger and stronger. But then after finally his clash with Shanks, he was made a warlord, and then maybe he was approached, and he's like, all right, you're getting really powerful here, Marine Hunter Mihawk. And he's like, ugh, I hate that name. Because in the last chapter, it's not like, Mihawk didn't really say what he approved or didn't approve of the title he was given, you know what I mean? Crocodile's like, back in the day, you were Marine Hunter. And Mihawk didn't like, I hate that name, or, oh, those were the good old days. He didn't really say it one way or the other, so I'm assuming he didn't like it, though, okay? That's why he became a warlord. He's like, okay, Mr. Mihawk, if you please promise to stop slaying Marines, you could be a warlord. Be like, oh my god, you are imbeciles. Okay, fine, I'll accept your warlord status if it means you stop coming after me. You know what I mean? And so, as he said in the chapter, I just want to live a peaceful life. I want to live a quiet life, okay? And this is the dichotomy of Mihawk's character composed to the One Piece world, okay? Mihawk is a man that seeks strength. However, in the One Piece world, especially the world government and the Celestial Dragons, they fear strength that is not their own. Okay? If there's anybody out there in the world that isn't a Marine or isn't a Cypher Pull agent or isn't a member of the world government in some way that's out there with a lot of power, that's going to scare the government, okay? And so that's what happened with Mihawk. It's like, I just want to be a strong swordsman. I want to dedicate myself to the way of the blade, and I want to become the strongest. I have no interest in being a pirate. I have no interest in pillaging. I have no interest in being a Marine. I have no interest in being a revolutionary and turning the world topsy-turvy. I have no interest in anything but the sword. But that lifestyle cannot exist in the One Piece world. It's sort of like you're going to be thrown into one of the categories regardless of whether or not you want to be. It's like, I would say it's sort of like, die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. I would say it's a sort of situation like that.
not quite. It's more of like the stronger you get in the One Piece world, eventually you're going to be put in one of the categories, regardless of your own opinion on the matter, okay? If you get strong enough, you're either going to become a Marine, you're going to become a pirate, or you're going to become a revolutionary. Even if it's by force, even if it's like, okay, the government's now classifying you as a pirate. I didn't do anything. I didn't want to be a pirate. Too bad. You're a pirate now. Or, you join the revolutionaries or you join the Marines or whatever. And so that's what happened with Mihawk at the end of the day. He started out as just a normal swordsman, but he got strong enough that he was eventually put in the pirate category. And then afterwards, he joined the warlord, so he was part of the government. And then after that, not because he wanted to, but they revoked his warlord status. And it's like, okay, Mihawk, you're back to being a regular-ass pirate. Come in quietly and we won't have any problems. And Mihawk's just like, you are all imbeciles. Can you not just let me live my damn life with this sword? You know what I mean? Can you not just let me live in my spooky castle on Kuraigan Island? He's not even bothering anybody. He's literally living on an island that's deserted off in the middle of the Grand Line somewhere in an empty castle. And it's like, if anybody wants to challenge him, there's some strong bounty hunters or swordsmen in the world that just want to approach his island and be like, Mihawk, I would like to challenge you for a duel. Mihawk would gladly accept. That's all he wants, and he keeps getting thrust into this situation, all right? Now, he still has his pride, and so that's why in the last chapter when it was, the Cross Guild with Buggy being the leader and then Mihawk and Crocodile being his underlings, Mihawk was still pissed off about that because it's like, I have my pride, and you're like a stupid clown, you know what I mean? So that still hurts, all right? But at the end of the day, Mihawk came up with the idea of like, actually, this might really work in our favor, Crocodile, because at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Now Buggy's going to have the target on his back. He's going to be the one that's going to be chased after by the Marines if anything happens. So this might actually work out, you know what I mean? I also wanted to talk about Mihawk's bounty. So Mihawk's bounty is now $3,590,000,000, which is pretty damn big. It's larger than Luffy's. It's larger than Buggy's. He has now a bounty that is comparable to Emperor's, okay? It was higher than Blackbeard's original bounty when he was an Emperor. I like to think Blackbeard's is higher now, and it's pretty close to Shanks's, okay? In fact, if we're going to rank this with Mihawk in the mix, we now have Shanks as the highest, assuming that Kaido and Big Mom's bounties are now inactive because we don't know what's up with them. But we would go with Shanks being the highest, and then Mihawk, followed by Buggy, followed by Luffy, and then I guess Blackbeard if he's still at 2 billion or something, but I think he's higher than that now. He's in the 3 billion area. They're all around there, and then Shanks is at 4 at the highest, okay? So why does Mihawk have a bounty that's higher than the Emperor that he works for? Okay, because that's like a logic that a lot of people may be a little bit confused by. Like, well, Buggy's the Emperor, and he commands Mihawk, but Mihawk still has a higher bounty, and that's something we've never seen before. This would be like in Kaido's crew if Kaido's bounty was lower than King's. It just wouldn't make any sense, you know what I mean? So there is a reason for this, I would imagine, okay? And the reason is, typically speaking, it's usually the captain of the crew that's the strongest because they're the ones that wipe out, like, other really powerful pirates. Like, but I want you to imagine, let's say it wasn't Luffy that took out Kaido. Let's say it was Zoro. Okay, let's say Luffy took out King and then Zoro was the one that 1v1 Kaido and he chopped off his damn dragon head, okay? If that were to have happened, I feel like the same situation would have happened with the Straw Hats as it was Guild. I feel like Zoro would be the one with the 3 billion berry bounty right now because he was the one that killed the Emperor, and Luffy's bounty would have went up from the 1.5. It probably would be like 2 billion or something, and he would have still been the captain, and Zoro would have been the first mate. That's how the pirate crew is like, organized, and the government can't do anything about that. If Zoro wants to say that Luffy is his captain, even if Zoro is stronger, then the government can't do anything about that, but they can give Zoro a higher bounty than Luffy. Now, obviously, that's not what happened. Luffy's the one that defeated the big bad, so he's the one that gets the highest bounty and the Emperor status, and Zoro gets a high bounty as well. But in the case with the Cross Guild, it's like, okay, out of Buggy, Mihawk, and Crocodile, the government decides Mihawk is definitely the one that's the most dangerous. He apparently is taking orders. Well, he apparently is taking orders from Buggy, which he's not, but the government thinks that he is. So it's like, all right, he's taking orders from Buggy, but Buggy still deserves a high bounty, but it's not going to be nearly as high as Mihawk because Mihawk is still, he's proven himself as the strongest swordsman in the world, okay? So we'll give Mihawk the higher bounty, but he does answer to Buggy. So I guess that's the way to look at that there. Yeah, and honestly, I could see Mihawk after this whole situation is over, after, like, I'm gonna imagine Dragon's Revolution is gonna take place, and it's gonna change the structure of the world government and the Marines. Luffy's gonna find the One Piece. After this is all over, I could see Mihawk just retiring if he doesn't get killed or something, if he doesn't get stabbed in the back by Shiryu or somebody. Mihawk's just like, all right, Luffy, you're king of the pirates, and then he'll have, like, the final battle with Zoro, and then maybe Zoro will win, and it'll prove to Mihawk that he is now the greatest swordsman in the world, and Mihawk's like, awesome. And then he will go and retire and live in a secluded life. And he just likes to be alone. And he'll fight some people that come to challenge him or teach some people the way of the sword. Maybe he'll clash with Zoro every now and then. But that'll be Mihawk's retirement, basically. And I see that as, like, the best possible life for him. He doesn't want to be part of these groups. It's just he's thrust into it because he's strong. And that's just how it goes in the One Piece world. Okay, well, anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. That was a little bit of a introspective into Mihawk's past. I hope some of that stuff turns out to be true, like fighting against, Rayleigh, maybe becoming Rayleigh's pupil back in the day. That'd be pretty interesting. But now we're moving on to everybody's favorite segment, Lemming Facts. Lemming Facts! Yay! Okay, so today on Lemming Facts, back in the 1600s, around the 1530s, there was a geographer, the greatest career path for anyone, by the name of Ziegler, and he was from Strasbourg, which I looked it up. It's a town that's located on the border between France and Germany. Has a lot of history on who exactly owns it, but we're not going to go into that now. This is not geography facts with Tekking101. This is lemming facts with Tekking101. Anyway, this geographer by the name of Ziegler came up with the theory that lemmings fall from the sky out of storm clouds. Like, that's how they're created. Like, a storm comes to town, and then lemmings fall out of the cloud. And then they hit the ground, and then they scurry about, and then in the spring, they all die. You know, I really love modern society. I'm glad that we live in a world with electricity and the internet and heat and air conditioning and all that stuff. But sometimes I wish I had a time machine that could actually take me back to this period just so I can read these crazy, because this was like a scientific, like, theory that I don't want to say was accepted by everybody, because it sounds out there. Even back then it probably sounded out there, but enough people believed in it that it was in the books. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's a storm. Some lemmings are going to be falling from the sky. So about like 50 or 60 years later, there was a Danish scientist by the name of Ole Worm. Literally how his name is pronounced. And I looked him up, and I guess that is how you pronounce his name. I mean, there's probably like an old Latin way to pronounce it, but I'm just going to go with Ole Worm. So Ole Worm was like, no, that's stupid. He seems like, honestly, a dude that was just like, I can't believe people are believing this shit, that lemmings fall out of the sky from storm clouds. So he took a lemming, and he dissected it, and everybody around him is like, ew, you're dissecting a lemming? He's like, why would you do that? It's like, because I want to learn about its biology. Yeah, whatever, weirdo. Hey, everybody, Ole Worm is over here cutting up lemmings. What a weirdo. Obviously, they fall out of the sky. And just Old Worm's like, I will learn the history of this world. And so he's digging through lemmings, and he discovers that, like, they're related to voles and, like, other kind of rodents. And, he had this crazy theory that what probably is happening is lemmings are very tiny, so whenever there's a storm, like a lot of wind and thunder and rain and everything, perhaps lemmings that are at higher altitudes, like they're up on a mountain or up on a hillside or something, storm comes in, giant gust of wind blows the lemmings off the hill, and they land on the ground, giving it the impression that lemmings fall out of the sky. And everyone was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then Ole Worm was made fun of and had tomatoes thrown at him for the rest of his life. I'm just kidding. I made that last part up. I'm assuming people probably accepted it as like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. It's like, that makes sense. Yeah, then, lemmings just spontaneously coming into existence from a storm cloud. Yeah, but, Yeah, that was the way of the world back then. Yeah, so thanks to Ol Worm. Actually, sometimes he went by the name of Olus Wormius. I don't know. Look up his Wikipedia page and you tell me how to pronounce it. Anyway, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Lemmings do not fall out of the skies, ladies and gentlemen. Signing out.